Hello and welcome to Microsoft Hates Greg. My name is Greg Deckler, and today we're going to be continuing on with our kind of exploring AI and ontologies and all of that sort of discussion that we've been having, that series that we've been having. And today we're going to be talking about flat tables. All right. And because you get into this, people use flat tables with AI quite a bit, and usually get pretty good results. But people are like, "Oh, you can't." People are like, "You can't do that. It's going to cause all kinds of problems. You're going to get hallucinations. There's all kinds of traps that you get into with flat tables." So we're going to take a look at all of that and that discussion, and try to see what we can come up with some kind of conclusion. And near the end of this video, we're going to revisit the bicycle the bicycle chat, the bicycle image creation that went all kinds of south, right? When we tried to do that, we're going to revisit it with a kind of a little spin, and you may be quite shocked with the results that we get, and then we'll go on and try to explain why the results are perhaps extremely different. So let's talk about flat tables, right? And people will use flat tables. It's very convenient with AI. You can literally just load up a CSV file, right? It makes it very easy to do. But people are like, no, no, no. You need ontologies. You need semantic models. You need all this stuff, right? And people will gravitate to flat tables because they're easy to generate, right? They're easy to query. They're easy to feed to models. They avoid joins and modeling, all that modeling nonsense, and they just kind of work with LLMs, right? And so this is very liberating, right? From an engineering perspective. But um, so people that are asking themselves, they'll ask themselves when they do this, like, why bother with star schemas, dimensions, or ontologies when AI can all just figure it all out, right? So the issue, though, that people will push back on this is that essentially a flat table collapses like entity boundaries and temporal roles and cardinality and causality and intent and all these things. They have all kinds of complaints, right, with them, and they'll say that once they're collapsed, those distinctions cannot be reliably reconstructed, even by extremely good AI. All right. So let's talk about what flat tables destroy according to the experts, right? Entity identity, for example, right? In a flat table, if you have like order ID and customer name and customer segment and sales amount, right? Well, what is customer segment, right? Is it a property of the customer? Is it a property of the order at the time of purchase? Is it a historical snapshot? Is it some kind of marketing classification that later changed, right? The flat table doesn't say anything about it, right? And AI can guess about it, but you know, guesses, people don't like them, right? They want more governance than that, right? Something else that people will talk about with flat tables is that temporal meaning gets destroyed, right? Flat tables kind of erase time, for example. So if you have like an employee, an department, a salary, and a date, is that current department? Is that department at the time of salary? Is that department at the time of hire? Is that a correction? Is it a backfill? What is that record essentially in that table, right? Versus ontologies, right? They'll make time very explicit. Versus flat tables, they make it implicit or lossy, I guess. This is what people say, right? For another thing that people will talk about is reuse of meaning in flat tables. The same column maybe means different. Same column name maybe means different things, right? So like a status column, well, that could mean status, could mean type, could be category, could be a flag. AI, with just the flat table, it can't enforce that order status is not equal to employee status or product category is not equal to customer category, that sort of thing. This is what people complain about, right? When people use flat tables. Uh, Causality versus correlation, right? So this one is, flat tables encode observations, not causes, right? Is what people will say. AI excels at correlation and prediction, but many businesses require why did this happen, or what should be constrained, or what is allowed versus forbidden, right? And this is what people will say, well, flat tables, right? You can't, they're bad, ontologies, we can encode these rules, right? Not just these patterns of data, right? But here's where some of the rub comes in, right? As we kind of noted in the last video in this series, right? Well, an ontology and semantics, it's just metadata or information about the data, Okay. And I'm using metadata in a very broad context. People get into all kinds of nitpicky about, well, a metadata is just, the fact, data that, and semantic models are meaning, like it's all just information, people, right? If you use metadata in a broad context, it's just information about data, period. Okay. You can, right? If you don't like to use the word metadata, then don't use the word metadata. Just think of it as, hey, we have this information about this data, right? Could be semantic meanings, right? It could be that, hey, this is a varchar, whatever, right? It's just information about the fields in the data. Okay, that's all it is. Semantics, ontologies, all of that. So why can't you use an ontology with a flat table? There's nothing preventing you, right? So again, it goes back to, well, why again do we be doing all this semantic modeling, right? We can just use a flat table. We can still use an ontology on top of it to clear up all of these things that people say our flat tables are bad at, right? We can still use an ontology on top of a flat table. We still don't need a semantic model, right? Although, I mean, technically, in Power BI land, a flat table, a single flat table in Power BI is still called a semantic model, people. How about that? So that's what I want to get. That's the first thing I want to get clear in this is that there's nothing preventing you from using an ontology on top of a flat table and saying, hey, look, these three columns here, these represent a product dimension, right? Maybe it's color, maybe it's category, maybe it's subcategory. You can put that in the metadata, right, about the model when you upload it to your favorite LLM and that sort of thing, right? You could provide, here's a flat table, and then here's some meaning, and here's some additional information, metadata about that data, right? There's nothing preventing you from doing it, right? You still don't need a freaking semantic model, right? So that's the first thing I want to get clear. Now, something else, but there's something else in all of this that certain people like Brian Julius and stuff like that are like, well, yes and no, you're kind of doing it wrong, right? And what they'll say is like, look, you need to tap into AI's superpower. The AI generative AI superpower. So what is a generative AI superpower? Generative AI superpower is code. Okay. And what people will say, like Brian Julius and others, they'll be like, well, you can't just say, create an ontology from this flat table. What you need to make AI do is to write code about that flat table. Okay. And they'll say, look, you load up the flat table, you tell AI to like, hey, give it a problem to solve where it needs to generate report graphics and stuff like that. What that does is that flips it into code mode. It's going to go out and create a bunch of Python code, generate a bunch of Python code to generate the images for that data analysis that you tell it to do. Then what they say is then tell it to create an ontology. Once it's basically written the code and understands everything about the flat table, then have it create the ontology for the flat table, and it just spits out, wondrous things. Now, you may be skeptical about this, and I get that. I sort of am skeptical, right, for about everything. But let's take a look at it, and we're going to use that bicycle example that I was talking about. So if you recall, let's see here. We had this bicycle example, right, where we told it create an image of a bicycle and label its parts. And we got things like handlebars, seat post frame, handlebars, which is the seat, the sack, which is not a part of a bicycle. Um, it did get like pedal and rear wheel and front wheel got completely switched around, right? So it's kind of a failure, right? The the fork isn't even and there's also another fork here, so it's just bad, right? So then we're like, oh, let's put some more rules around this. And if I can move this, sorry, the sharing thing was getting in the way. So then we said, well, let's create some more rules around this. And it did a little bit better, but it still wasn't very good. It did get top tube, but then it has top tube down here and head tube and right. And so we had mixed results around all of that sort of thing. So then what I did was I'm like, okay, I want to take Brian's advice and I'm going to make it write code, right? So I say, write a program application that displays the image of a bicycle and then interactively displays the parts of the bicycle when the user mouses over each part. And so it did. it said, here's a complete single HTML app that you can paste into bike-hover.html and open it in a browser, da 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 da. And here's the code, right? So it created all the code. Well, guess what? Here's the result. And as you mouse over it, there's the saddle, right? The bicycle seat that you sit in. It's even got a nice description. It's got the seat post, right? It's got the top tube. It's got the handlebars, head tube, fork. Hey, it got this as the front wheel, got the rear wheel, got the chain, got the seat stay, got the chain stay, got the chain, got the crank and chaining, right? Down tube. It one-shotted it, right? And this was the prompt. This was the only prompt. This was it, right? So we went from this god awful just representation of a bicycle, right, which is awful, right, to this, right, just because we made it write code, not just create an image. Okay, so why is that, right? You may be like, well, what the hell? Why did it suddenly get so good at knowing what a bicycle parts are? Well, because we made it write code. And this is something else, an article I think that explains what's going on really, really well. Brian Julius forwarded this article to me, and it's called the jaggedness of AI, right? The shape of AI is jagged, and it's always probably going to be jagged, right? And it's a great article. I highly recommend it. I'll put the link in the description of the video. But this is where this is the best represent. This picture right here explains it beautifully, right? So basically, task and AI can do, right? And then this is general intelligence, whatever. And so but so it may be good at coding, like here maybe this is coding and maybe this is something else in terms of research, and maybe this is image generation down here, this little bump right here. And but it's going to be good at certain things and not good at others until we get to AGI, right, which where it's better at than a human at everything, but it's still not even or uniform, right? It's still going to be better at certain things. Now, if I had to like conceptualize the picture of AI, most AIs right now, this coding is probably like way out here, where if everything else is here, coding is like this, right? AIs, LLMs and that, Claude and ChatGPT, they're really, really, really good at code. It's just that's their superpower. So if you make the AIs write code, you're going to get substantially better results than if you try to just, have it reason its way to victory, right? So, and this is what Brian Julius and other people, are talking about when they like, look, you're doing it wrong. You can't just feed the flat table and then say, create the ontology for it. You're correct. It's not going to recreate it very well, right? What those meanings are. But if you make it write code, right? And then have it write the ontology once it's figured everything out, because, once it's switched into its superpower, then you're going to have much better results. So I think it's extremely intriguing. So those are the kind of the takeaways from the video, right? One, there's nothing preventing you from using metadata and ontologies, right, with flat tables, coupled with flat tables, right? There's nothing that prevents you from doing that, which again speaks to that semantic models are dead, okay? And two, right, that there's this jaggedness within the AI LLMs. It's not proportionately good at everything the same amount, okay? Some things it's way better at than others. Creating images of bicycle parts, right? Bad, okay? Creating a program that displays bicycle parts, right, and labels them, good. Now, that may seem just absolutely bonkers to you, but that's how these LLMs and these AIs work, man. So tap into the superpowers of AI, and you'll be extremely surprised at that some of the things that you failed at with LLMs and AIs before. If you can tap into that superpower of code, you're going to get incredibly good results. So that's it. That's all I had for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.